Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to discover that money no longer exists. Your bank account is gone. Your credit cards are useless. Cash has become nothing more than colorful pieces of paper. You leave your house, walk into a grocery store, fill your basket with food, and head to the checkout. The cashier smiles and asks, "What are you trading for all of this?" You pull out your phone, hoping to pay with Apple Pay, but there's no network that recognizes money anymore. Maybe you offer your watch instead, maybe your shoes, maybe your laptop. The cashier shakes their head. They don't need any of those things. You leave empty-handed, not because you're poor, but because the system that made trade effortless has vanished overnight. It sounds like science fiction, but for most of human history, this was reality. There was no money, no banks, no wallets, and no prices. Every single exchange depended on one simple question: do you have something I want? If the answer was no, the trade ended there. Today, we rarely think about money. We tap a card, scan a phone, or click a button, and within seconds, value moves across the world. It feels so ordinary that we forget money is one of humanity's greatest inventions. It isn't just paper or metal, it's an idea so powerful that it built empires, financed wars, created billionaires, collapsed economies, and quietly shapes almost every decision we make every single day. But before money changed the world, humanity had to survive without it. Around 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age came to an end, humans lived in small groups spread across Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Americas. There were no cities, no governments, and no markets. People hunted animals, gathered fruits, and shared what they found. Survival depended on cooperation, not commerce. If someone caught a deer, the entire group ate together. If another family discovered edible plants, they shared them in return. Nobody kept track of exact payments because everyone understood that one day they would need help themselves. Trust was the original currency. Everything changed when humans discovered farming. Instead of constantly moving in search of food, people settled in one place. Villages began appearing beside rivers where crops could grow. Families started raising sheep, goats, and cattle. For the first time in history, people produced more food than they needed to survive. This small change transformed civilization. A farmer could now grow enough grain to feed several families. A potter could spend all day making clay pots instead of searching for food. A blacksmith could focus entirely on crafting tools. Specialization had begun, and with it came trade. At first, trading seemed simple. A farmer exchanged wheat for pottery. A shepherd traded wool for fish. A hunter swapped meat for a new spear. This system, known today as barter, worked surprisingly well in small villages. But as communities grew larger, a hidden problem began to emerge. Imagine you're a farmer with bags of wheat and you need a new pair of sandals. You visit the village shoemaker, but he already has plenty of wheat. What he really wants is fresh meat. Now you have to find a hunter willing to exchange meat for your wheat before you can return to buy the sandals. But what if the hunter doesn't want wheat either? Maybe he wants a clay pot. Suddenly, one simple purchase turns into a chain of impossible negotiations. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. It simply means that two people must each want exactly what the other person has at exactly the same time. As villages turned into towns and trade expanded, this became a nightmare. A fisherman couldn't easily trade hundreds of fish before they spoiled. A shepherd couldn't cut a sheep in half just to buy vegetables. Some goods were too heavy to transport. Others lost value over time. Every trade required long negotiations, and every transaction wasted time. Civilization was advancing, but its economy was trapped. People tried solving the problem in different ways. In some regions, cattle became a measure of wealth. In others, salt was so valuable that soldiers were sometimes paid with it, giving us the word salary. Cowrie shells traveled thousands of miles across Africa and Asia because they were rare, durable, and difficult to counterfeit. On remote islands in the Pacific, people even used giant stone discs weighing several tons as money. Ironically, those stones were often too heavy to move. Ownership changed simply by everyone agreeing who owned the stone. Even thousands of years ago, people were beginning to understand something remarkable. Money didn't need to be valuable because of what it was made of. It only needed people to believe. Yet none of these systems solved the problem completely. Cattle could die, salt could dissolve, shells could be discovered in greater quantities, giant stones couldn't fit in your pocket. Humanity was still searching for something better, something portable, something durable, something everyone would accept without argument. That breakthrough would happen around 5,000 years ago in a land historians call the cradle of civilization. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in ancient Mesopotamia, the world's first cities were rising from the desert. Thousands of people lived together, building temples, farms, and markets unlike anything the world had ever seen. As trade exploded, merchants needed a reliable way to record debts and measure value. Surprisingly, the answer wasn't gold. It wasn't silver coins. In fact, coins hadn't even been invented yet. Inside the great temples of Mesopotamia, priests began storing grain for entire communities. Farmers deposited part of their harvest after each season, and temple officials carefully recorded exactly how much each person owned using clay tablets marked with symbols. Over time, these records became more than simple bookkeeping. They became promises. If your tablet said you owned a certain amount of grain, you didn't need to carry the grain itself. The record had value because everyone trusted the temple to honor it. For perhaps the first time in history, value became something that could exist independently of the object itself. Soon, another material started gaining importance: silver. Unlike grain, silver didn't rot. It was rare enough to be valuable, but common enough to circulate. Merchants weighed pieces of silver on carefully balanced scales to settle large transactions across cities and kingdoms. There were still no coins, just carefully measured chunks of precious metal. But for the first time, civilization had something approaching a universal medium of exchange. Without realizing it, the people of Mesopotamia had planted the seed of an idea that would reshape human history forever. Money was no longer just an object. It was becoming a system built on trust. And that simple idea would soon spread across continents, inspire kings, create fortunes, and eventually give birth to one of the most recognizable inventions the world has ever seen: the coin. For nearly 2,000 years, civilizations across Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and China relied on silver, grain, and other valuable commodities to trade. While this system worked, every transaction required weighing metal, checking its purity, and negotiating its value. As trade expanded across larger cities and kingdoms, the process became slow, inefficient, and easy to exploit. Civilization needed a simpler solution, and that breakthrough arrived around 600 BC in the kingdom of Lydia, located in modern-day Turkey. Instead of weighing precious metals for every exchange, the Lydians stamped small pieces of electrum with the king's official seal. That simple stamp guaranteed the coin's value, allowing people to trade instantly without questioning its worth. It was one of history's greatest innovations, and it spread rapidly across the ancient world. The Greeks embraced coins and turned them into symbols of culture and commerce, while the Romans transformed them into symbols of power. Every Roman coin carried the image of the emperor, reminding millions who ruled the empire every time they made a purchase. Roman currency connected merchants from Britain to Egypt, making trade easier than ever before. But Rome also revealed a dangerous weakness. As emperors faced rising military costs, they secretly reduced the amount of silver inside their coins while keeping the same face value. At first, few people noticed, but eventually prices began to rise, confidence collapsed, and inflation spread throughout the empire. It was one of history's earliest reminders that money only works when people trust it. While Europe depended on metal coins, China was solving a completely different problem. Merchants traveling long distances carried heavy bags of copper coins, making trade difficult and dangerous. To solve this, they began depositing their coins with trusted merchants and carrying paper receipts instead. Eventually, the Chinese government adopted the system and issued the world's first official paper money during the Song dynasty. Many Europeans found the idea unbelievable. How could a thin piece of paper be worth as much as gold? But China had discovered something revolutionary. Money wasn't valuable because of the material it was made from. It was valuable because society believed it had value. Centuries later, Europe experienced another financial revolution with the rise of banks. Goldsmiths stored people's gold in secure vaults and issued written receipts proving ownership. Over time, people began exchanging those receipts instead of withdrawing the gold itself. The receipts had effectively become money. Then bankers noticed something remarkable. Most customers never withdrew all of their gold at once. This allowed banks to lend part of the deposited gold to others, helping businesses expand, ships cross oceans, and economies grow faster than ever before. Money was no longer just something people owned. It had become something capable of creating even more wealth. But the entire system depended on one fragile idea: trust. If people ever lost confidence in the banks and demanded their money back at the same time, the system could collapse. For centuries, governments believed the safest money was backed by gold. Under the gold standard, every banknote represented a fixed amount of gold stored inside government vaults. This system created stability, encouraged international trade, and helped fuel the Industrial Revolution. But as economies expanded and global wars became increasingly expensive, there simply wasn't enough gold to support the growing amount of money countries needed. During the World Wars and the Great Depression, governments abandoned the gold standard to keep their economies alive. After the Second World War, World leaders met at Bretton Woods in 1944 to build a new financial system. Instead of every currency being tied directly to gold, most countries linked their currencies to the US dollar, while the dollar itself remained backed by gold. For a time, the system worked, and the American dollar became the foundation of global trade. But by the late 1960s, the United States had printed more dollars than its gold reserves could support. On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon ended the dollar's link to gold, forever changing the financial world. For the first time in history, the world's most important currency was backed by nothing physical at all. No gold, no silver, only trust. This became the fiat money system that almost every country still uses. Technology soon transformed money once again. Credit cards replaced cash, ATMs gave people access to their accounts at any time, and online banking allowed money to move across the world in seconds. Today, most of the world's money exists only as digital numbers stored on computers. Then, in 2008, after the global financial crisis, an anonymous creator known as Satoshi Nakamoto introduced Bitcoin, a digital currency designed to exist without governments or central banks. Whether Bitcoin becomes the future of money or not, it challenged one of humanity's oldest assumptions. Does money really need a government behind it? Today, central banks are developing digital currencies, artificial intelligence helps protect financial systems, and millions of people rarely carry cash anymore. Yet despite thousands of years of innovation, one thing has never changed. Money has never truly been about gold, silver, paper, or even computer code. It has always been about trust. The same trust that allowed ancient farmers to accept clay tablets instead of grain. The same trust that gave Roman coins value. The same trust that turned paper into money and digital numbers into wealth. The next time you tap your phone, swipe your card, or transfer money with a single click, remember what you're really using. Not just dollars, pounds, or euros. You're using an idea that has evolved for more than 5,000 years, an invention that built civilizations, financed exploration, sparked revolutions, and connected the global economy.